Hi, Grace Harris from Robert L. Bland Middle School, and this is one of 3 videos that represents the 6th grade sewing project tutorial. So this is video number 1. And the project that we are making, get it right here, is a bath kit. This is a finished sample, and you can see it's made out of a small hand towel, bath hand towel, and in it we have little pockets where we can put personal care products for when we are going on trips. Okay, so we've taken a bath towel, we've put some pockets in it, and when we get this project completed, we will have learned how to put on a button, do a whip stitch, and do a running stitch. And when we get finished, we'll have a nice little project that we can use at home. Okay, so that's the final project. This is my sample that I'm going to be working with today to show you. It's just a small terry hand towel. Actual bath towels do work better than kitchen towels, but kitchen towels will work too. Okay, so first thing I have to do is I want to go ahead and take all of the tags off of my towel, okay? And I need to get a button. It doesn't have to match, it doesn't have to be the same color. My towel, I don't know if you can tell really very well, this is like a real light lavender color, and my button is yellow, but purple and yellow look pretty nice together. And what I'm going to do, this is a little hard to do this where you can see what I'm doing, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my button, okay, in the center on one end of my towel, okay? So that's what I'm going to be doing first. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is get my thread, and I'm using a thread of a very different color just so it'll be real obvious to you in this video. But you want to pull about this much thread, drop the one end, pull that much thread again. I'm going to snip it off. I have my needle, my sewing needle right here, and I'm going to put my thread through the eye of the needle, okay, and then I'm going to pull this thread, the one end of the thread, clear down so that it meets the other end of the thread. So my needle's here, over here is the other end that has my 2 pieces of my single piece of thread, okay, if you can see that. Okay, then it helps to kind of moisten your fingers a little bit. To get the knot on the end opposite of where the needle is, I'm going to wrap the thread across my finger, and I want to have the long end on the outside of my finger, on the outside where the fingernail is. And I'm going to wrap this around my finger twice in the same spot, right over that first knuckle area of my index finger. And then I have the string coming off the front, okay? And then I'm just going to kind of rub this back and forth with my thumb, and as I'm doing that, you'll see it comes loose and it starts twirling up. Then I'm going to take my middle finger and reach over top my index finger, move my index finger away, and then pull. And when I do that, I have a really nice big knot on the end of my thread, and that's what I want. Okay, so I have my needle, thread, and my knot. Now, hopefully I can get this laptop moved down so that you can see what I'm talking about. I hope it doesn't hurt the volume. Sometimes that does that. Okay, let me see if I can do this. Okay, so here is my button right here, okay, and I have it pretty much centered right in the middle where I want it on one end. Okay, usually you pick the pretty end. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this in my hand, and I'm going to come from back behind, and I'm going to go up one of the, through the fabric, the towel, and one of the holes of my button. Then I'm going to reach over here and I'm going to pull this until that knot I made stops me. You have to pull it all of the way until it stops. Now I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go in the button catty corner, the hole that's catty corner from the one I just came out of. Now if you only have 2 holes in your button, you'll just come up one hole and down the other. Okay? Won't be anything catty corner. I'm now going to come up the same hole I first came up and pull my thread tight, down through the catty corner hole, reach underneath my project and pull it tight, up through that same first hole, pull it tight, down through that same one, the other one, catty corner one, pull it tight, and I'm going to do this, I don't know, 5 or 6 times, okay, 5 or 6 times. Now, if you only have a 2-hole button, then you'll just have to wait until the people with the 4-hole, get the other ones done. But if you just have 2 holes in your button, you're just going to kind of sit tight for a few minutes, okay? All right, but those with 4 holes, now I need to get thread across these other 2 holes. So now I'm going to start coming up a different hole, okay, and pull all the way till it stops, and then down the other hole that you haven't used yet, catty corner across. And I'm going to reach underneath and pull that all the way through. And then I just keep repeating that. I'm going to come up that one hole that I came up, pull, go down through the opposite, reach underneath and pull it all the way nice and tight. Again, you want to do this about 5 or 6 times. Up the one hole, down the other. Each time you have to pull the thread really tight, okay? All right. Now, if you have a 4-hole button or if you have a 2-hole button, we should both be on the same step now. And what I want you to do, okay, your thread should be coming out of the back of your project, not the button side, but out the back side, okay, right now. So if it's not, make sure you go ahead and put it through the button until it's coming out the back, okay? Okay, then what we're going to do, we have to make some shank, what's called some shank for our button. It's space between the fabric and the button so that if we were actually going to button this into something, it would have room for some other fabric. And how I do that, okay, I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to go in where I have my knots and all my stitches so far on the back, but I'm not going to come through the button. Instead, I'm just going to come through the fabric in between where the button is and the fabric. It's not going through the button this time. And then I'm going to pull that thread there. So now my button's coming, or I'm sorry, now my thread is coming out through the top part of my project, but between the towel and the button. And I'm just going to take my string, my thread, and I'm just going to wind it around my button 4, 5, 6 times, something like that. Okay? All right. And that has created a little bit of space between my towel and my button. Okay. Now, the next thing I need to do is I need to get my needle back to the back side of my project again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, right where all my stitching has been taking place, I'm just going to insert it between the button and the towel from the front, push it through so that it's going to come out the back side where all my stitches and my knot, my first knot is. Okay. Okay. Now, if I were to just snip this thread at this point, eventually this button could work its way loose. There's nothing completely holding it on here. There's no knot holding it completely in place. There's the knot that got started, but there's not a knot that ties off the loose end yet. So we need to do that. And what we're going to do is something that I call a stitch knot, okay? And it's just what it sounds like. On the back side where your thread's coming out, you're just going to take a tiny little stitch. And it's really helpful sometimes to just take that tiny little stitch right where you have all of your stitches already. And I don't want it to go through to the other side. I just want it to pick up some of that stitching or maybe a little bit of the towel. Just pick up a little bit of it and put it through there. Okay, now see this knot, this loop that's closing up as I'm pulling? What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put my needle through that loop that's closing up, and then I'm going to continue to pull. And what that's doing, it's creating a little knot. I'm going to do that same thing a total of at least 3 times. So I need to do 2 more. So I'm going to take a little tiny stitch right here. Okay. Pull my needle, and as my loop is closing up, before it closes completely, I put my needle through it, and then I pull. And I'm going to do that one more time right there. Take a stitch right where all those stitches are. Okay, pull, and right before it closes all the way, I'm going to put my needle through that loop and then pull. Okay, now I have something that's going to hold all those stitches that's holding my button on. Okay, so at that point, I'm going to go ahead very carefully and very close there. I'm going to snip my thread. I want to make sure I don't snip any knots or stitches, but snip my thread. And that is the first step in our project.